It's late in the evening. You walk through the door, drop your keys on the nearest table, leave your shoes on for just a few more steps, and place your bag on a chair. In the bathroom, a few drops of water remain around the sink. In the kitchen, one cup sits beside the counter. Nothing looks particularly messy, but by tomorrow those things will still be there. Then, another cup appears. Another jacket lands on the chair. A few objects lose their place. And somehow by Saturday morning, your home feels like it needs hours of cleaning. We usually think the problem is that we didn't clean enough. But what if the real problem started much earlier? A home rarely becomes cluttered in one dramatic moment. It becomes cluttered through dozens of tiny moments we barely notice. And that means the opposite may also be true. A calm, clear home can be built the same way. Not through exhausting cleaning sessions, but through small behaviors repeated so consistently that mess has less opportunity to accumulate in the first place. In this video, we're going to explore 6 simple habits inspired by everyday approaches to maintaining order in Japan. None requires an expensive organizing system. None requires sacrificing your weekend. Most take only seconds. And the final habit may be the most important because without it, the other 5 can easily become another set of rules you follow enthusiastically for a week and then abandon. You don't need to copy another culture perfectly. Different homes have different needs. The surface habits may be cultural, but the principle underneath them is deeply human. When the smallest actions become easier to repeat, maintaining your environment stops feeling like a battle. So let's begin with the boundary where every home starts. The front door, part 1. Set a boundary right at the door. You come home after a long day. Before entering the living space, your shoes stop at the door. It takes seconds. But this tiny boundary changes what happens everywhere else. We usually think taking off our shoes is about keeping the floor clean. But the deeper principle is prevention. Everything your shoes collect outside, dust, dirt, moisture, becomes something you may eventually have to remove inside. So, instead of becoming better at cleaning the consequence, remove part of the cause. Make the entrance effortless. Give shoes one obvious place. Create a comfortable spot to change them. Keep indoor slippers nearby if you use them. The environment should make the right behavior easier rather than forcing you to remember another rule. This is not really about shoes. It is about designing boundaries. A home becomes easier to maintain when unnecessary disorder is stopped before it has a chance to enter. And the best cleaning task may be the one you never create. Part 2. Don't create future work. But not every mess comes through the front door. Much of it is created quietly while we live. You finish breakfast and leave a few crumbs behind. You use something and place it on the counter. You cook dinner and think I'll wipe that later. Each decision feels harmless, but later is how a 10-second task becomes part of a 40-minute cleanup. The second habit is simple: finish the space when you finish the activity. When cooking ends, reset the stove. When chopping ends, return the cutting board. When you use a surface, leave it slightly better than you found it. The goal is not perfection, it is closure. Because every unfinished task becomes something your future self must notice, remember, and eventually resolve. Try this with just one area today. Choose the place where mess accumulates fastest and attach the reset directly to the activity. Don't clean after living. Make restoring the space the final step of using it. That tiny distinction changes everything. Part 3. The few seconds rule at the sink to the few seconds. Now we come to a habit so small that it almost feels pointless. After you wash your hands, brush your teeth, or finish using the kitchen sink, take a cloth and wipe the area dry. A few seconds. One simple motion. Done. Why should something this minor matter? Because the smallest traces of disorder are often the ones we allow to accumulate. A few drops become water spots. Water spots become something you notice tomorrow. And eventually, a surface that needed seconds of attention becomes another cleaning task. But something deeper is happening. The goal is not to keep your sink perfect. It is to close the loop immediately after using it. Make this effortless. Keep one cloth within reach so you never have to search for it. Use the sink. Wipe it. Walk away. What disappears in a few seconds today never gets the chance to become tomorrow's work. Small messes are easiest to defeat before they become visible problems. Part 4. A 10-minute reset instead of waiting for the weekend. Now imagine the end of your day. Instead of looking around and thinking, I need to clean this house, set a timer for 10 minutes. Nothing more. Straighten the cushions, put away the dishes, clear the obvious surfaces, return wandering objects to their places. When 10 minutes are over, stop. That limit matters. If your evening reset repeatedly turns into 40 minutes of cleaning, your brain begins to associate the ritual with effort. Soon, skipping it becomes easier than starting. 10 minutes changes that. It is short enough to feel manageable, but consistent enough to prevent yesterday's disorder from becoming tomorrow's starting point. Choose one reliable daily cue before dinner, after work, or just before you settle down for the evening. Let that moment become the signal. And don't aim for perfection. The purpose is simply to leave the home a little better than you found it that morning. 10 quiet minutes tonight can give you back hours this weekend. Part 5. Every item has only one address. Now look at the objects that create clutter most often. Keys on the counter, a charger on the sofa, papers on the table, a bag that seems to move from chair to chair. We often call this laziness, but sometimes clutter is simply a decision problem. If an object has 3 places where it could belong every time you put it away, your brain has to make another tiny choice. And after a long day, the easiest answer becomes, I'll leave it here for now. So, remove the decision. Give every frequently used object one specific home, one drawer, one hook, one shelf, one basket. Start with 10 objects that are constantly out of place. And if something never returns to its assigned home, reconsider the location. Perhaps the system, not your discipline, is the problem. Order becomes easier when your environment has already answered the question, where does this belong? One object, one home, one less decision. Part 6. Lower the barrier to action. And now we reach the habit that makes the other 5 sustainable. Lower the threshold for what counts as done. This sounds strange because most of us believe higher standards create better homes. But a standard can become so demanding that it prevents us from starting. If you cannot clean the entire kitchen, you do nothing. If you cannot organize the whole room, you leave everything. If you do not have 30 minutes, you refuse to use 3. That is the trap. Instead, ask a smaller question. Can I make this space slightly better right now? 1 wipe counts, 1 object returned counts, 2 minutes of resetting counts. The goal is not to lower your desire for a calm home. It is to lower the amount of effort required before action feels worthwhile. Because consistency needs an easy beginning. A tiny action repeated every day can accomplish what occasional bursts of perfection rarely can. Don't protect perfection, protect continuity. That is how these habits become automatic. Think back to the home we saw at the beginning. The keys now have a place to return to. The shoes stop at the door. The sink is wiped after use. And before the evening begins, 10 quiet minutes return the room to order. Nothing dramatic happened. And that is exactly the point. A calm home is rarely created during one exhausting Saturday. It is shaped in tiny moments that barely feel like cleaning at all. Keep the outside world outside. Finish small tasks when they appear. Reset the spaces you use most. Give every object one clear home. And most importantly, stop waiting until you can do something perfectly. But don't try all 6 habits tomorrow. Choose 1. Maybe tonight you wipe the sink dry. Maybe you give your keys a permanent home. Maybe you spend just 10 minutes resetting the room before you rest. Repeat it until it begins to feel natural. Then add another. Because a peaceful space is not built by doing more once in a while. It is built by allowing less disorder to accumulate every day. So which habit would make the biggest difference in your home? Tell me below. And if you want more small ideas for living with greater intention, stay with me for the next story.